All right. Welcome back. You're watching Newsx. I'm Megha Sharma. There's some breaking development coming in after Zohran Mamdani's mayoral win. Alex Soros, American investor and philanthropist, makes a statement via his social media platform X, congratulating Zohran Mamdani for his win. In his tweet, he has stated that he is so proud to be a New Yorker and that the American dream continues. Aditya is on the telecast with me. Aditya, shed more light into this controversial win. And even more controversial, the congratulatory message coming in from George Soros' son himself.
If you see, George Soros has been, in controversy as far as the USAID role is concerned. Indeed, USAID has been, when the Trump became the president of the United States, he disbanded USAID, which left many USAID employees unemployed. So indeed, at this juncture, Alex Soros congratulating Zohran Mamdani is signals to the fact that there is a controversial thing going on. And in fact, Trump has openly said that if Mamdani becomes the mayor of New York City, he will cut on the federal funding. So now in the days to come, we can expect a very, very severe conflicting views between U.S. President Donald Trump and the Zohran Mamdani.
Okay.
So indeed, it is a matter of concern which needs to be seen as to how, because he fought those mayor elections on the promise that he will provide affordable housing to all the Americans. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Aditya, for giving us that update. The big debate of the hour. Zohran Mamdani has created history as New York's first Muslim, Indian origin, South Asian, socialist and the youngest mayor. This victory would have, in different circumstances, united all immigrants, particularly Indians, against the MAGA supporters who demonize people of color, including us Indians, calling them job stealers and criminals. But such is not the case this time around. Mamdani has identified himself as Muslim first and an Indian later. He has used his Muslim first politics to term the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a war criminal and equating him to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. He has applauded the American left. He has alienated the majority of the Indian diaspora, particularly the Hindu diaspora, who are appreciative and fully supportive of the work done by Prime Minister Modi for India and Indians. Mamdani uses his platform to equate Hindu nationalists with white supremacists, coming across as hostile and not representative of Hindu Indians particularly. He perpetuates pro-Pakistan and pro-Khalistani sentiments to run his political campaign to gain support of Islamists and Khalistanis. Mamdani is a follower of Nehru's ideology, as was witnessed during his speech after having won that election. He advocates a socialist model of governance, which includes regulated rents and groceries, increased taxes on corporates and the wealthy, free public transit, and much more. Now, this is in direct contrast with what America and New York stand for: free will and a robust capitalistic model, which is opposed to a socialist government-heavy model that Mamdani advocates and is going to now perpetuate, where entitlement politics prevails, increasing red tapeism and shrinking productivity. The opinion on Mamdani winning the New York mayoral elections is hugely divided within Indians and in India. Let's discuss this more. Joining me on the telecast is Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor. Ambassador Kapoor, first of all, the sentiment on the ground, particularly amongst the Indian diaspora in New York and the rest of the country, about this controversial win of Zohran Mamdani. Even though he was a very popular candidate, I think gaining up to 94% of approval ratings.
Thank you, Megha. Mamdani is a mixed bag in the sense that, he has made very controversial statements, and he is more like the person of Arvind Kejriwal in terms of offering freebies to the New York people and getting a lot of their support. Amongst the Indian community, the reaction generally to him is quite negative amongst the people who matter, amongst the senior people. But amongst the youth and the college students, just like in India, there are neoliberals and other categories there is some support for him from those groups of people who have soft corners either for the Congress party or for leanings towards the Khalistani movement, or who are particularly positive towards political Islam or jihadi Islam or the Gaza and Palestine issue. But the others are quite upset with all the statements that he has made in the past. And he's going to have a lot of difficulty in working with the federal government, the administration here in Washington, D.C., because as you had mentioned, Trump has said that the support that he will get will only be for the essential aspects, and the funding will not flow freely to New York. There's also talk about the National Guard being deployed there, or even federal forces to deal with the immigration, etc. There has already been a call by one of the MAGA, sort of extremists for deporting him out of USA. So all those rhetoric will continue. But I think as long as he sticks to being a mayor of New York, without thinking of himself as a foreign policy spokesman or trying to talk about US-India relations or talking about Indian domestic politics, that will do him a lot of good.
Okay.
Whereas if he sort of tries to step beyond his domain, the reaction from the Hindu-American community will be quite strong and quite fierce and quite massive. So the Americans are stuck in this current situation where both the sides, are not the most ideal sort of parties or leaders or representatives, in terms of the fact that the MAGA right has got into the extreme mode of bigotry. We saw a Department of Labor video against H1Bs, which was targeted against H1Bs, and focused also mentioned about 71% of them being Hindu Americans. So those sort of things are being propagated, and Vivek Ramaswamy put that tweet about Halloween, and there was so much of negative reaction by the MAGA right extremists. On the other hand, you have the Democrats who have sold their souls to the Islamists, sold their souls to George Soros type elements, the woke elements, leftist liberals. So for the US, not to have a party which represents the American interests, what America brings to the world, what American administration brings to the Americans, what is the future of America, what is the future role of America, how can American relations with other countries be strengthened, how can India-US relations become the defining relationship for the 20th century, etc., etc. Those sort of matters are getting obfuscated or put in the background.
Yeah.
And this sort of, very poor quality of leadership on both sides is emerging, which is to the detriment. I, being a student of American history and having looked at it for the last so many decades and also read about it for the last couple of centuries, feel particularly saddened at their current state of affairs, to not have the appropriate leadership, to be the rightful sort of guiding force, not only internally but externally, because they have to understand what their threat perceptions are. They're not even focused on the threat perceptions today. They're so distracted with their bipartisan antagonism towards each party, the other party, that they are not even able to open the government. The shutdown has extended to the maximum number of days in the history of America, and they are just talking about all other issues other than what are the core areas of interest.
Yeah. I'm going to also include Professor Madhav Nalapat into the conversation. Professor Nalapat, particularly about this comparison which seems to be made by Mamdani during a number of his campaigns that he had been doing in the past, about the Hindu nationalists being equivalent to white supremacists. He has gone on and criticized Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has spoken out against the demolition of the Babri Masjid. He has spoken out in favor of the farmer protests that had taken place, where there were Khalistani elements that were also playing a crucial role in perpetuating this protest, which had turned violent. How do you view the Indian diaspora, and particularly the Hindu Indians living in America, viewing this transformation that has taken place?
Look, I'll tell you, I have contacted friends in New York, and believe me, two groups of New Yorkers, both of whom have contributed very significantly to the progress of New York. One is, as you said, Hindu American New Yorkers, and the other are Jewish American New Yorkers. The Jews in New York number about 1.3 million, with the largest group of Jews, a very small community worldwide, outside Israel. And they are frankly extremely worried about Zohran Mamdani and some of his statements. I mean, he toned up his statements a little bit, he polished it up, softened it up during the mayoral campaign. But for years, he has been spewing hatred of Hindus and Jews. And this is a very, very serious matter. Occasionally, he slips into hatred for Christians also. But the reality is, he does not even represent the Muslim community. There are three Muslim Indian Americans who got elected. One is the mayor of Cincinnati, Purewal, and the third is, I think, the lieutenant governor of Virginia, Miss.
Ghazala asked me.
So the
Ghazala asked me.
point is very simple. The point is that this man represents a radical fringe. And how did he get elected? He got elected because, let's be honest, a lot of people in New York are suffering. They have neither a home nor a job, and frankly, they don't regard themselves as having any prospects. Mamdani has made a huge list of promises, not that he is going to try and keep them. He is going to keep them. A huge list of promises, and frankly, these desperate people, they thought that he would definitely give them salvation, and it will not take more than 6 months or 1 year before they realize that the condition is worse than before. Why? Because those who provide jobs are going to leave New York, and those who are jobless are going to increase in New York. And I mean, it's not a question of, as I said, Muslim or Hindu or whatever, because as I said, these two other Muslim Americans who got elected as mayor of Cincinnati and as lieutenant governor of Virginia, West Virginia, frankly, they're moderate. And that is the real face of the Muslim community. But he has tapped into a huge well of resentment, of anger against what they see as a ruling establishment and what they regard as the denial of their birthright, which is a good education, good housing, of good income. They say we don't have any of these things. In fact, we have no income at all. We have no housing at all. I mean, how can this be? And so here
Okay.
comes Mamdani waving a wand and saying, hey presto, I'm going to solve all your problems in a flash. Don't worry. So they were all flocking to the booths to vote him in.
Okay, okay. Getting in Surinder Singh Lali also into the conversation and talking about this, third point, particularly about this socialist democratic model of governance that Mamdani projects and is going to implement now that he is mayor in New York, talking about, regulation of rents, regulation of groceries, talking about imposing wealth tax to the rich, increasing taxes on the corporates of the region of the city. This is in direct contrast, as I said before, to the ideals of what America stands for. It's about the American dream. The diaspora from all across the globe comes to America to achieve that dream. This is the capitalists' playground, and suddenly New York, which is the hub of all these things and more, which represents capitalism at its core, is being turned into a socialist model. How long will this sustain?
Megha, that's $1 billion question. And while I do get into the extremes of this election, and especially socialism in a city which is one of the richest cities in the world and the ground zero of capitalism, so that ought to give you an idea of the irony that this election has actually dwelled into. But Megha, in the interest of disclosure, I've lived in New York City for about 10 years. I went to college there, I worked there. So I'm a bit emotional about it too. In the last 40 years that I've been in and out of the United States, especially in New York City, I have yet to see an election that high profile. I mean, the President of the United States was directly involved in this election. Normally, they don't get involved as much as Donald Trump did. So this is not just in the election of the mayor of New York City. I think it is also a referendum on the Republican Party. Number two, Mega, I'm neither a fan of Donald Trump and nor of Mamdani, and for obvious reasons, which you already said, because he had been pandering to the fringe rogue Sikhs, especially, in the Richmond Hill and the Queens area where I did spend a lot of my time. And unfortunately, I don't tend to associate with any one of them, even though we do wear a turban, because that's what he did. But Mega, let's give the devil the due. I mean, every politician is as good as his win. So he was smart enough to capture the imagination of what New Yorkers wanted to hear. I mean, even, the Jewish people voted for him. He knew how to even monetize and capitalize on the anti-incumbency of the Republicans and the difference between the haves and the have-nots in New York City. Now, I'll tell you about 8 points really quickly. He had a team of 100,000 volunteers who knocked on 3 million doors. Unlike Donald Trump, who probably gets up in the morning and starts tweeting in all capital letters from his, Air Force One without realizing, the impact on his own allies on it. But this election, Mega, had 8 extreme polarities in it. Number one, It was a 34-year-old millennia fighting with a 79-year-old septuagenarian, which is Donald Trump. Number two, it is socialism versus capitalism. Number three, it was old school versus the new age. I mean, Mamdani really used social media to his advantage, and that's where his mother's, Bollywood skills also came quite handy. I was reading a beautiful article on that. Number four, the haves and the have-nots, because if I was to define this election in 3 words, it will be affordability, because he understood, and Mega, New York is again extreme, so he actually hit on the head and monetized between the gap between the two. And number 5, he spoke to people. He was probably one of the only mayors that I've seen in the last 40 years who went to nightclubs, who went to comedy shows, who went to every possible place that could have existed, because he knew how to, capture the imagination of the disgruntled. So he spoke to people while Donald Trump speaks to people. He monetized on the urban and the rural divide. Because that's what Donald Trump
made your
just
points.
allow me 2 more points.
Quickly, I'll come back to you. I'm short of time. I would also like to include Adit Kothari into the conversation as well. And Adit, so, there are 2 pitches that Mamdani has made. One, talking about, he's spoken about how it's the city of immigrants and the country that has been betrayed by Donald Trump, who's a Republican, who carries forward the torch of the MAGA white supremacists. That's one of his narratives. The second narrative is obviously about the socialist model of governance, which seems to have garnered a lot of votes and appreciation and popularity for him. And the third one which is particularly targeting Hindus, Hindutva, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the BJP. Amongst these 3 segments, how has Mamdani appealed to the different set of voters in New York, and why is this attacks and diatribes on Modi being of essence and crucial for his victory in the election?
So I think, Megha, if you look at Zohran Mamdani, he's a clever fellow and he understands, the demographics of New York very well. So 22% of the American Muslims actually live in New York. So they concentrated in New York. So he's capitalized on that population really well. He understands what the youth want. So the youth want job security They want better healthcare. They want better sort of rent controls. And he's tapped into that sort of emotions of the youth as well. When you look at New York in general, the affordability is skyrocketing. Rents are going up. Medical aid is almost unaffordable. So all of these kind of things he has tapped into with populist measures and populist rhetorics, similar to something what a Mamta Banerjee in Bengal does, or what Arvind Kejriwal in Delhi does. But what is more lethal or what is more dangerous is the toxic blend of his populist measures of Arvind Kejriwal kind of politics with Sadiq Khan's politics, where you mix the Sharia and the Bolshevikism together, and that toxic mix is what is going to be, I think, lethal for New York. I mean, when you import the politics of everywhere else in the world and you bring it onto the streets of New York, it creates a sort of a situation for divisiveness in a very diverse kind of a city. And that for me is very scary, because that will basically be the undoing of a great city like New York. All in all, we've spoken about George Soros. George Soros directly has not funded Zohran Mamdani, but he has paid monies to the tune of almost $24 million to the Working Families and Party, which is the WFP, which is directly sort of associated itself to Zohran Mamdani. So we can see how the figures are sort of rolling out, how the sort of the web is sort of webbing up here.
Okay.
Trojan horse is going to be the undoing of American free market capitalism, and socialism is not going to work. But at the end of it all, the federal structure also controls about 30% of the finances that go into New York. So if Donald Trump was to pull that 30% finances, or if he was to play hardball with that 30% of finances, that will have some sort of a ripple effect in Zohran Mamdani being able to execute everything that he's written out in his policies.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, sharing your views. It has been an insightful conversation, and it would be interesting to see how Zohran Mamdani comes through on all the promises that he has made for the population, for the voters of New York during his campaigning time. We'll keep a close watch. Stay tuned on Newsx.